Dear viewers, welcome to a new episode of Education Exchange from the headquarters of Public Access TV in collaboration with the Iowa School Community District. And it's my privilege to introduce tonight Adam Kurth, the new Director of Technology and Innovation at Iowa City Community School District. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you very much for having me.
We are very happy to have you, and today is the 31st of October, 2016, and the weather is beautiful.
Absolutely.
And we are lucky in Iowa City here to have such good weather. And then to have such great conversation with you. Now that you are one of the leaders of this district, I would like you to introduce yourself to our viewers, give them a little background about yourself and about your experience, and then we'll move on to your tough job that includes the innovation and technology.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm very excited to be in Iowa City. I am relatively new to the area, just arrived within the last 4 months or so. Moved here with my family. I have a wife, Sarah, who's been a teacher for years and years, but is herself transitioning a little bit and working at ACT this year. And I also have 2 little daughters, 3 years and 1-year-old. So the transition's going well. My background is almost exclusively within educational technology. It's a field I've been in for 17 years, I suppose, at this point. And I actually got my start in that field very near Iowa City, working at Scattergood Friends School in West Branch as a technology coordinator there right out of college. So, you know, it's something that I've been involved with for a long time. And, you know, one of the things that I really enjoy is that I still find it interesting every time. You know, technology is always changing, but also how we approach technology and instruction is always changing. That keeps me interested and makes it a fun job. And
you moved from Des Moines to Iowa City. Do you like Iowa City?
I do like Iowa City. You know, as I mentioned, I had spent some time in the area.
Right.
I've done some graduate work at University of Iowa.
So it's like coming back home.
Exactly, yeah. You know, it's great, you know, in that it's a new area for me, but I already knew a lot of the restaurants and things like that, which is, you know, always a good thing.
No culture shock.
No.
So your responsibility includes the network upgrade across the Iowa City Community School District.
Correct.
And I would like you to say a few things about that.
Sure. One of the projects that was underway even before I arrived was bringing our district's communications network up to a modern standard. By that I mean the ability to do streaming video to thousands of devices, you know, within our schools. The ability for teachers to make use of cloud-based applications, that sort of thing, without worrying about whether the network and the internet connection was going to be robust enough. So my predecessor, Dr. David Duty, had began this upgrade project, and we're now at the point where we've really reached all but just a couple of buildings within the district. And already, in part because of the pace of technology and how much we're relying more now, even than we were 5 years ago, on the internet as a resource, we're already at the point where, you know, especially in our secondary buildings, we're needing to go back and do further, further efforts essentially to bolster our wireless networks, for instance, make sure they're covering all of our buildings, all of our classrooms. So that project is underway. We are currently working in earnest on City High, and later in this fall, early winter, we'll begin work on West High. And then, you know, it may go without saying, but we're doing the same network implementation to reach the same level at Liberty and also the new Hoover, both of which are currently under construction. So Updating the in-building technology is a big piece. But even beyond that, district-wide, and this has really, taken a lot of my time since I've arrived here. District-wide, all of our buildings are connected via fiber networks. So all of the computers, when you log into a computer at Mann Elementary, that login is going back to our district administration building via the fiber network. And we found that we have some issues there with performance, but also failover. If one piece of that network goes down, it has the potential to take down a whole quadrant of the district, essentially. So that's another thing that we're really working on, is to build some redundant connections so that if this route goes down, we still have a route over here that'll get people back to where they need to be to get out to the internet and get access to other network resources and that sort of thing.
One of the important points that you just mentioned now is the fact that no matter how the signal of the internet is, you still can communicate. Can you explain this to me? I mean, consider me ignorant and explain this to me.
Yep, basically. So if something goes down, being able to get around that, essentially.
Right.
You mean? So there are a couple ways to think about it.
You use the word cloud, right?
Yep. So there are a couple ways to think about the cloud, and a key way, is to think about anything that's in the cloud is somewhere on the internet. A drawback to that is if I lose my internet connection, I've lost my connection to the cloud. But a big asset is that if one connection to the internet goes down, or if one cloud-hosted service goes down, there's probably another one there that can accomplish the exact same thing and essentially keep services up. So trying to explain this in pretty simple terms, what we're trying to do as a district is to make sure that any user who's using the internet, using cloud resources that are out there somewhere on the internet, has at least two paths from their computer to those services, such that if any one of them goes down, they still have another one to rely on.
And we'll move now to the update of classroom technology standard suite.
Yep, and with this one I actually have some slides that help to show what we're hoping to do with the classroom technology suite update. And this is something that I think is a really exciting project. You might remember in 2012, the district was implementing its Every Classroom campaign, which brought smart boards to every classroom.
Yes.
Along with some other technology. And on the left on the slide, you can see what our current suite is. It includes
these slides are good because they are readable, especially for a young man like me.
That's
I can read
right.
well.
Large font sizes are keys. Yeah. Anyone out there who designs PowerPoint, use big fonts. But our current suite, we brought smart boards and we brought document cameras and some other technologies. One of the things that we have to be mindful of in the world of technology leadership is making sure that we're bringing the technologies that are the most current, the most efficient, and provide the most flexibility for our students and teachers to adapt to technology that's changing far faster than we can update equipment. So on the right, our new standard suite, there are a few key changes. The things highlighted in yellow are all new to one extent or another. But one that you might notice is that the smart board is no longer included in the suite on the right. The reason for that is between 2012 and today, interactive projector technology has been able to include the technology that the smartboard had for digital ink and being able to work on the board with the computer. That's now included in the projector itself. So you can simply project onto any whiteboard or even a wall, and the projected surface is an interactive surface. You can go up and interact with it on a cinder block wall if you feel like it. Which is huge in terms of it's one less piece of equipment that can break, but it's also huge in terms of cost savings.
But teachers, they have to keep up with this very speedy
Yeah.
development. I mean, like, I was lucky because at our time, that the development was slow. But now it's every day. This is the first time I know that the smart board will be obsolete soon.
Yeah, well, and one of the things, and hopefully, the challenge is always you want to keep your technology up to date, but you don't want to move faster than people can move. You can't overwhelm people and change everything all the time. So I actually notice the item right below interactive projector is smart notebook software. So the software the teachers are using and the end user experience is really, the software is identical. And for our teachers and students, the experience should be basically identical, but without the extra piece of equipment that gets mounted in the front of the room. The document camera is a component we're absolutely going to keep. For those of you who might not be familiar with what that is, think basically a digital version of an overhead projector. It's the old overhead projectors. This has a camera that records and broadcasts whatever's being written below that camera. A few advantages compared to an overhead projector. One big one is that you can do objects. So if I'm a teacher who wants to show intricacies of a 3D object, I can use a document camera, I can move my camera around and show different parts of that. But we found that those are tremendously well used across the district, and that will definitely stay. The fourth item down is a really critical one. It's not a big dollar value item, but has potentially huge implications in the classroom, and that's wireless display. So essentially the ability for our teachers to project, and our students for that matter, to project to a projector in the room from anywhere. They're no longer tethered by a cable to a particular point. And we know within education that when teachers are physically moving around the room, when they're in close contact with students, when they're engaging from more than just a head-on angle, that's tremendously useful in terms of engaging with students and building that connection within the classroom. We think wireless display is potentially a very valuable tool for teachers to use. That said, we'll still have cabling there. So if the wireless part were not to work for any reason, a person can simply plug in as they always have. So that's there as well. The fifth item is the last one I'll go into detail about, but that's classroom audio with a voice lift. And basically what I'm getting at there is every classroom will have integrated audio, and then with that it comes with a wireless pendant mic which a teacher can wear, and it's hard to describe the effect, but it subtly enhances the volume of the teacher's voice throughout the room. And there's a pretty solid amount of research that shows that somewhere between 30 and 40% of kids have at least temporary mild hearing loss at some point, and that can be a significant impediment to learning, particularly at lower...
All the headphones and loud music and...
Yeah, exactly. Well, but particularly even at lower grade levels, where kids don't necessarily have the ability to fill in sounds with context. If they miss a sound, they can't necessarily figure out what that word was that they missed, whereas an older student may be able to. So that's something else. When we have visited other districts that have implemented some of these technologies, that's probably the one that consistently gets the highest reviews from teachers who are already using it.
And it's good in our diverse classrooms too, with people
Absolutely.
whose language is not a native English.
Yep. Absolutely. Same contextual issues there, and not to mention just clarity alone is valuable, obviously. And if we move on to the next slide, this sort of illustrates how we want to roll this out. This is not something where we're just going to throw away everything we have in the district and roll out a new standard overnight. So we're looking at doing this in a 4-year cycle to deploy this to our buildings, basically 7 or 8 buildings per year. And this will begin fall of 2017 with the first round. But it spoke to an issue when we were trying to plan this Our district for a long time has been on a 6-year replacement cycle for technology. So when we issue a laptop to a teacher, they keep that laptop for 6 years. That's created a number of issues. Anyone who's owned a laptop knows that batteries don't tend to last all that well past 4 years or so. They tend to develop hardware issues and tend not to be compatible with modern software. So as a response, what we're planning to do is to switch the entire district to a 4-year full building replacement cycle, where when those 7 or 8 buildings this coming year get their classroom technology upgrades building-wide, they would also get upgrades for all staff and student devices at the same time. And that gets our buildings onto the same schedule, which makes it a whole lot easier to offer professional development within our buildings since everybody has the same equipment. And then also guarantees, and this is really the key, it guarantees that our schools have access to technology that's current enough to make use of the tools that are going to be available in 3 years that we don't know about today. And that's really critical. If we move on to the next slide, this brings up a really exciting initiative that we have going on. This is not something where the discussion is new. It's been discussed in the community for a while. But we do now have a timeline on the discussion. That is for a one-to-one device initiative, basically where each student is issued a device by the district, which they use in all of their classrooms and they can take home and use outside of the classroom.
What is the rate now?
What's our current rate in the buildings? It's about, it depends on the grade level. At the high schools, it's about 2.5 to 1. And elementary level, it's about 3.5 students per device.
Wow.
So this is a pretty substantial increase. And then the biggest factor here is just the ability to take the device outside of the classroom and for the student to have some ownership over a device that is theirs. This initiative, as you can see, will be rolled out in fall of 2017 at all of our high schools. Including our what will be three comprehensive high schools and also Tate High School. And then the following fall in 2018 at all 3 of our junior high buildings. So overall, in the next 2 years, we're talking about slightly more than 7,000 devices that we'll be deploying. A couple little details with this deployment. One is that, I sometimes get asked about the cost of this kind of thing. It sounds very costly. The devices that we'll be choosing are Chromebooks, which overwhelmingly that's what our students would prefer to use. Basically, for those of you who aren't aware, a Chromebook is a laptop that doesn't run Windows or Mac operating system. Instead, it runs Chrome OS, which is a Google sponsored operating system. And almost everything it does is, going back to the term, in the cloud. So the operating system itself lives on the computer, but it's designed to function almost entirely online. And that works well for our students. There's research that says that 90 to 95% of what high school students do on a computer is done somewhere in a web browser. But we do know that there are specialty softwares out there for computer engineering and for architectural design and for biomedical science. And so we're working on a platform to deliver those applications also over the network, over the internet, so that students will have access not only to general internet resources, but also to any of those applications they need, again, whether they're in school or whether they're at home with their device.
Great.
At the elementary level, I had mentioned our ratio is about 3.5 to 1. It's actually, I guess, 3.4 to 1. And along with the high school and junior high one-to-one initiatives, we'll also be decreasing, I struggle with the term because that implies bad. We'll be improving our ratio at the elementary grade levels as well. And that's another area. The demand for devices within our elementaries right now is incredibly high.
Great.
And One of the things that we're also doing in these grade levels is to move again to a more mobile device-oriented deployment. So fewer, labs of desktop computers that sit in the same spot all the time, more flexible, carts and classroom assigned devices, but ultimately to lower that ratio to 2.5 to 1. And then after we've done that in all of our elementary buildings, in the next round to lower that further to a 2 to 1 ratio, which I'm very excited about.
And this would conclude the elementary school computer lab improvement or development.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
That's very encouraging. Very encouraging.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you. You have tremendous experience now with technology in classroom, and as a professional educator myself, and John and Mike are teachers or as well. We would like to know what is the difference, or how, I'm trying to paraphrase the question so that it would sound easy to understand. That my generation of teachers, used to be one-on-one and rely on one-on-one ideas and approach. And now the computers and the devices and the internet and all that came between the teacher and the student. From your perspective, from your own observation, how did it help improve the instructional techniques in schools?
I think one thing that technology really enables is the ability for teachers to even more effectively differentiate instruction for kids. You've been a teacher and you know that not every child comes into the classroom needing the same thing from you.
Right.
And technology in many cases allows, and not just, by providing different resources via the computer so kids are working on different assignments, but in many cases it allows for teachers to better reach students where they are. So for instance, there is adaptive math curriculum that allows, through technology, allows students to work on, problems and concepts that are most appropriate for where they're at. And then the teacher, rather than, delivering a single lesson to all of the kids in a classroom that may or may not be fully relevant to all of those kids, the teacher spends most of their time, instead of, delivering that lesson, working with individual kids as they work through, problems, and they might not be in the same place, but it helps reach them. I also think about flipped classrooms, which is essentially a concept, and there are a few words for this. Blended learning is another that you might hear, but essentially the concept where a teacher provides, and it can be something that they create or it can be something from a curricular resource, but they provide content that students are consuming outside of class time. And then class time is devoted to actual instruction, interacting with the teacher.
Involvement.
Yep, and so those sorts of things allow teachers to be more, active in terms of engaging directly with students. I think that's really valuable. Another one, we look at. Another one that we look at is decentralized classrooms, where the focus is less on the teacher and more on a student-centered environment. And in many cases, technology can very much enable that, where multiple displays within a room take the focus off of the front of the room. Simply, something like the wireless video that I mentioned enables the teacher to be out and in the room to really create more of a community of learners than a sit and get kind of model.
And your job now includes, among all this crowd of responsibilities, instructions
Mhm.
for educators.
Right.
Can you address this? Because, I mean, there are, as you well know, the College of Education prepare you maybe to understand the history of education, the philosophy of education, but when it comes to the applicable part, even how to write a good lesson plan, it's not really the emphasis of the College of Education.
Right.
Let alone the technology part. So your responsibility here is enormous, because you have to keep these educators up to this very fast development of technology. Can you tell me about this part of your job?
Sure. That's something, luckily it's not just me in the district, and we have a team of innovation coaches who work with our teachers as well. And that's one of the things that, we're constantly trying to plan and work towards, particularly with technology, differentiated professional development opportunities.
Okay.
Because our teachers, just like our students, come in from, very different places, and we need to be able to reach all of them where they are. And that's one of the things that we're working on doing. We've begun to implement some of those opportunities, but increasing those is of great value.
It was great meeting with you
It was
tonight.
excellent meeting with you.
And I am very happy that we were able to talk to our viewers about this job, especially the innovation part of it, that we will focus on it. Maybe by the end of the year you will come to us and tell us about the conclusion of your experience. This show is going to be aired on Channel 18, that's public access TV. This beautiful institution that provides us with all the studio and facilities that you see. And from a man like you who understands technology, you really appreciate this kind of facility that we are using here. As well as Channel 21, that's the education channel, cable, of course. For people who don't have cable, I think YouTube is a very good outlet for this. All our programs are having copies at YouTube or at public access TV website that I invite our audience to go there and watch all the activities that public access is doing. They are doing tremendous job in this community that needs to be appreciated. Thanks to John Kurth, our executive director, our chief, our executive producer, and Mr. Michael Peterson, our executive director, and of course Trenton, who is a technical director and from Public Access TV. And for our audience, thank you for listening, and have a wonderful, good